Now, in part 1, what we dealt with was the exercises of Loyola. And we saw how the spiritual exercises of Loyola are being applied in the world today in many forms and many guises, and that they are a counterfeit to faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is something that you grasp because it says so. The word says so, therefore it is. Faith is total trust. The spiritual exercises are hands-on. You experience, you have a feeling, you have a meeting with whatever it is you are imagining until it becomes real. So it is the counterfeit to faith. Now, unfortunately, this has crept in to every aspect of Christianity. And it is a very delicate subject because everything we're going to speak of is in vogue today. And because it is in vogue doesn't necessarily mean that it is from God. The Reformation rejected the spiritual exercises as a means of finding your relationship with God, and Luther taught that the just shall walk by faith. You walk by faith. Now, how are they putting spiritual exercises into practice? Ignatius Loyola said the first thing you have to do is imagine the place. You must visualize it, and it must become a reality, and then you must actually get to the point where you communicate on a one-to-one basis, and there are various rituals that you go through until you finally have this spiritual experience. Now, the first mega churches to put it into practice were some of the very big evangelization churches that beamed it out throughout the world on their television networks. Robert Schuller. Here is Paul Yonggi Cho, head of the world's largest church in South Korea, and he wrote a book, The Fourth Dimension. And Robert Schuller said the following in regard to visualization in the foreword to this book. He said, I discovered the reality of that dynamic dimension in prayer, fourth dimension, in prayer that comes through visualizing. Don't try to understand it, just start to enjoy it. It's true, it works, I tried it. Now, visualization is the first method, if you like, of the spiritual exercises of Loyola. And it is a form of hypnosis. Psychologist Michael Yapko explains many times therapists aren't even aware that they're doing hypnosis. They're doing what they call guided imagery, which is visualization, or guided meditation, which are all very mainstream hypnotic techniques. If you need hypnosis to capture your loved one, then you're in big, big trouble. If you can't do it with being yourself, then forget it. Here we have the Inner Experience Explored, Mystical Experience Registry. Carl Jung. Now we'll tie psychology, we'll tie spiritual meditation and visualization together with all of these techniques in order to experience a phenomenon. Now, Carl Jung had mystical experiences himself. The Swiss psychologist and major contributor to psychotherapy, Carl Jung, cultivated the ability to have visions from deep imagination. Some would label these explorations as mystical experience, while others would say they are more akin to the sort of creating thinking artists did. So there's a fine line here. In addition to these experiences, Jung had several spontaneous visions when he was recovering from a heart attack when he was about 69 years old. All of his visions are described in detail in his book, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. And I want you to see how this happened and where he went. I'm going to read one of them. This comes from the Mystical Experience Registry, Jung's recorded active imagination experience. Jung uses a visual technique that he has found helps him go deeper into active imagination. This technique is realistic visualization as descended a great distance. In this experience, he figures that he has descended about 1,000 feet. So you go down, 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 down. There he discovers a cosmic abyss. Next he sees something like a moon crater, and then he has the feeling that he's in the hand of the dead. Near the steep slope of a rock, he catches sight of two people, one an old man and the other a beautiful young girl. I want you to notice what he's seeing, and as he's visualizing this. He summons up his courage and approaches them. He listens carefully to what they say. The old man turns out to be the biblical figure Elijah. And the girl, Salome. Now there's an odd couple. That's an extremely odd couple. Elijah, who was translated without seeing death. Elijah, the type of the antitypical end-time Elijah. Salome, a totally different type. She was the daughter of Herodias. She's the one who danced before the king. She's the one who asked for the head of John the Baptist. That's an interesting typology. We'll deal with that in the next lecture. So here is this odd couple, one for good and one for evil. And what does he imagine? What a strange couple, he muses. But Elijah tells Jung that he and Salome belong together for all eternity. What do we have here? We have yin-yang. We have the fusion, the cosmic fusion, pantheistic fusion of good and evil, and they belong together for all eternity. Along with the two is a third, a large black snake. Jung sticks close to Elijah and keeps his distance from Salome. I would do that too, by the way. You could lose your head in the process, you never know. Over time, Jung holds conversation with Elijah, who eventually changes into another figure, Philemon. Philemon teaches Jung about the nature of human consciousness. Jung begins to see how autonomous inner figures can act. It is the inner figure that seems to hold this knowledge, not Jung. Again, Jung's inner figure changes. This time it alters to take on the form of the Egyptian notion of the spirit Ka. Vintage edition of Memories, Dreams, Reflections. There is the quotation. So here you have the full catastrophe. Good, evil, inner voices, and the soul spirit, which is the Ka, which is part of the human makeup. Now let's go to St. Louis University. Ignatian Passion. The challenge of the cross in the 21st century. Now we're talking Jesuits, straight up. Ignatian Passion. Carl Jung and the Spiritual Exercises of Ignatius Loyola. Presenter Anthony T. Moore, PhD, Special Assistant to the President, Georgetown University, Jesuit University. Fascinating. What do a 20th century Swiss psychoanalyst and a 16th century Spanish mystic have to say to each other, talking about Ignatius Loyola and Jungian psychology? This workshop is based on the premise that Carl Jung offers a uniquely compatible psychological framework for understanding the dynamics of the spiritual exercises of Ignatius Loyola. Here we have a marriage of convenience. It will begin with an overview of the structure of the psyche according to Jung. The Jungian framework will then be applied to the spiritual exercises. Some of the themes covered will be the archetypical imaginary in Ignatius's account of his conversion experience at Loyola, discernment of spirits, movement of the self towards wholeness, the principle and foundation of the desires of the authentic self, connecting to unconscious psychic energy and hearing the call of the king, the practice of Jungian active imagination and Ignatian contemplation. This is occult to its very core. But this forms the basis of modern spirituality. Gone is the walk where you walk by faith and you trust the Lord because He said so. Gone is the faith where you have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Now you have to experience it in a tangible, touchable feeling. So it's no longer faith. It's no longer substance of things hoped for and evidence of things not seen, because it becomes a reality. Let's see how the same contemplation works outside of the church. According to Marianne, A Course in Miracles is a self-study program. This is the Oprah Winfrey website. Of spiritual psychotherapy contained in 3 books. It is not a religion, but rather a psychological mind training based on universal spiritual themes. So here you have the same type of approach, completely outside of the spiritual realm, and we're moving into a totally different realm here. And it's being offered in a secular capacity. So let's have a look at how they do this. Here is a discussion, The Power of Meditation with Oprah and Cheryl Richardson, Oprah and life coach. Please note the terminology. The terminology is even the same. Coach, Cheryl Richardson, talk about the importance of meditation and explain how you can get started centering upon yourself. Here we go. Cheryl. So don't worry if nothing miraculous happens in the next 5 minutes, as long as you spend 5 minutes of quiet time with yourself, just turning your vision inward, which is what closing your eyes allows you to do. You've succeeded. You've accomplished something very, very important. As a matter of fact, probably one of the most important things in your life. So I'm going to just do a 5-minute meditation, guided visualization. You getting the connection? Getting the dots together here? You might want to put things down on the floor around you. Get comfortable. Sit in a way that feels comfortable to you. That's the basis of the first step towards hypnosis. Oprah. So just start there, and you will be surprised by the discipline that comes from doing it on a regular basis, how your life begins to unfold for you differently. I call it centering upon myself. Fascinating stuff. All right, so we find it in the secular world, the mega media, and millions of people are drinking it in the spiritual and the non-spiritual world. Let's go to another world. Let's go to the sports world. Here is the official webpage of the Olympics that have just taken place, the Beijing 2008 Olympics. One world, one dream. Isn't that interesting? You know, there's so much to read between the lines. One world, one dream. This is the mega movement to the one world mindset. Well, let's have a look. Black Pope Hans Kolmbach, the Jesuits general, what do they have to say in this quote? The Jesuits in sport. They're the ones in government. They're the ones behind professional sports. The owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2000 is a Knight of Malta. The owner of the Detroit Lions in 2000 is a Knight of Malta. All the top owners of these ball clubs, for the most part, are Knights of Malta, getting the people whooped up on this hoopla over games and sports while they're busy creating a tyranny. Well, that's a quote from an author, and they do own the sports world. They are the masters of visualization. That's where their spiritual exercises come from. And they're using it in sport. Visualization and sports psychology, you can check it out anywhere you want. Mind training for triathlon, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. That's the power of positive thinking. Do you lack confidence? Do you need this, that, and the other? I'll show you how to do it. The essential component to visualization is the best method I've seen for programming yourself for success. Through the all-powerful subconscious mind, the key to all sport. This is the simple act of regular mentally imagining yourself performing at your peak level. They say it's even more important than the training. You sit down, you relax, and you run in your head, and you win. Power of positive thinking. Trouble is, what if everybody starts doing that? Who's going to win then? That's just a thought. Never mind. So here your subconscious goes into overgear. Effective visualization is the answer to overcoming most triathletes' problems and reaching the next level of improvement. The main reason why the daily visualization recording is so effective, now you get a recording and you just play it into your ear, is because of automatic relaxation. Now listen, this is their own words. The hypnotic recording places you in an easy and automatic state of relaxation, perfect for visualization. The visualization gets more powerful each day. The recording has to be designed to become stronger and more effective by day. It can even work while you're asleep. Now imagine a relationship with Jesus Christ, and Jesus compares a relationship with your wife in a husband and wife situation. So if I want a good relationship with my wife, I get my pendulum out, I get my music out, and I go until her eyes go, and then I got a maid. That's pathetic. That's pathetic. Let's take another one. Are you a better swimmer than your results are showing? Mind training for swimmer. And who are the trainers? Craig Townsend, diploma in clinical what? Hypnosis. Many techniques such as visualization had to be specially tailored and specialized to suit swimmers, otherwise they simply didn't work. And so many head coaches, swimmers around the world, and also many US university competitive swimming programs use this technique. Here's another one. Get in the zone and stay there. Who are the people training these people? The psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, author, lecturer, then they give his name, psychotherapist, 24 hours of clinical experience. He trains golfers, tennis players, baseball players, martial arts, bowlers, fencers, the whole shooting match. Everybody comes to him to get this whoopla. The power of visualization. Here's another man, author, and there's his name, is a master educator on mental training to achieve peak performance, psychologist who has worked with Olympic athletes and teams, Canada, What it does? Realities beyond hypnosis. Are you getting the drift? That we're not making this up? Power of visualization has helped millions of people achieve goals. So you need visualization to achieve your relationship on a spiritual level as well. So now let's go to blatant New Age. New Age, Ascended Masters Research Center, gems from the Ascended Masters, true visualization, an excerpt from I Am Discourses. Where are we going? Now we're going to visualize ourselves to the point of being God. True visualization is God's attribute and power of sight acting in the mind of men. When one consciously pictures in his mind the desire he wishes fulfilled, he is using one of the most powerful means of bringing it into his visible, tangible experience. I am God. I can do it. I have the power within me. This is the language of the serpent. Dave Hunt writes in his Occult Invasion, occultism has always involved three techniques for changing and creating reality: thinking, speaking, visualization. There is no doubt that this technique is not a religious technique solely. It is used across a broad spectrum of human activity. Now let's get back to Robert Schuller. He says, you don't know what power you have within you. You make the world into anything you choose. Yes, you can make your world into whatever you want it to be. This is power religion. True religion is magnifying Jesus, and he must become more and I must become less. It is important to remember that meditation in any form is the harnessing by human means of God's divine laws. We are endowed with a great many powers and forces that we do not yet fully understand. The most effective mantras employ the M sound. You can get the feel of it by repeating I am, I am, I am, I am, I am many times over. Isn't that a blasphemy? To say that I am? Move into mighty moods of meditation, he says. Draw energy from the centers of sacred solitude, serenity, and silence. Sacred silence. Find yourself coming alive in the garden of the prayer called meditation. That's your own little private place. Yes, the New Agers have grabbed hold of meditation. Hey, Christian, hear me. Let's not give up the glorious God-given gift of meditation by turning it over to those outside of our faith. So now they're using this hypnotic tool, and any form of hypnosis is never from God. Why? Because God has never designed that one mind should be subject to another in anything. You are a free agent, accountable to God and not to someone else. True meditation is always word-based. Psalms 119, 148. Mine eyes prevent the night watches that I might meditate in thy word. Contemplate the word. Not visualize all kinds of things and then, let it happen. When I remember thee upon my bed and meditate on thee in the night watches, I will meditate also all thy works and talk about thy doings. That is, living the word, believing the word, and talking about the goodness of God. The word meditate, siak, a primitive root, to ponder, to converse, to commune, complain, declare, meditate, muse, pray, speak, talk. So when the Bible uses this word, it says, talk to God. He's your friend. Don't go, ooh. Go and talk. Talk like with a friend. Pastor Steve Mitchell, Garden City Grace Brethren Church, quotes Schuller as saying, the secret of winning unchurched people into the church is really quite simple. Find out what would impress the non-churched in your community, then give it to them. Wow. Whatever it takes, just do it. He took his cues from Norman Vincent Peale and began an approach to ministry that all but did away with expository preaching centering on God's word. Let's replace that. And decided to address what he felt were people's psychological and emotional needs. Well, you don't have to go to church for that. You can tune in to Oprah Winfrey for that. You don't have to go to church. You can do that elsewhere. This approach shifted the focus from God to man, and ultimately gave birth to a lot of what we see today in terms of pragmatic or do whatever works to get the folks in strategy, regardless of whether we see these methods in the Bible or not. He's right. We're getting a man-centered religion. Schuller said blatantly the church's problem is that it had a God-centered theology for centuries when it needs a man-centered one. Self-Esteem, the New Reformation. Page 115. So we have to get away from this God-centered religion to a man-centered religion. And my question is, where did he get that idea from? Did he make it up? Malachi Martin, Keys of this Blood, Roman Catholic pontifical professor. At the conclusion of Vatican II, Pope Paul VI told the bishops that their church had decided to opt for man and to serve man to help him build his home on this earth. Man with his ideas and his aims, man with his hopes and fears, man in his difficulties and sufferings. That was the centerpiece of the church's interests, said the pontiff to his bishops. So where did he get the idea? He got it from his Roman Catholic mentor, the Pope. That's where he got it from. This is a new theology to get the whole world into one big soup tank. He writes, Robert Schuller says, self-esteem then, or pride in being a human being, is the single greatest need facing the human race today. I strongly suggest that self-love is the ultimate will of man. Good grief. That what you really want more than anything else in the world is the awareness that you are a worthy person. Do not fear pride. The easiest job God has is to humble us. God's almost impossible task is to keep us believing every hour of every day how great we are as his sons and daughters on the planet. He'll have to change the hymns. We'll have to sing from now on, How great we are. How great we are. Isn't that terrible? What does Timothy say? 2 Timothy. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own self. You know the verse, I don't have to read it to you. Self-love is something which the Bible condemns. The whole aim of Christianity is emptying yourself and pouring yourself out for others, not centering on self and imagining your great I am experience. This author writes, by beholding Christ you will become changed until you will hate your former pride, your former vanity and self-esteem. Here we have 2 opposing gospels. Your self-righteousness and unbelief, you will cast these sins aside as worthless burden and will walk humbly, meekly, trustfully before God. You will practice love, patience, gentleness, goodness, mercy, and every grace that dwells in the child of God, and will at last find a place amongst the sanctified and the holy. The 2 religions are diametrically opposed to each other, the biblical view and the modern view. It is through this avenue of self-esteem and self-sufficiency that Satan will seek to ensnare the people of God. Wow, I think this person knew what you wrote about 120 years ago. Through this avenue of self-esteem, that God's people will be ensnared. We will move from the lowly image to this image of power. Where does Schuyler stand with Rome? Schuyler has sympathized with Catholicism in the past. 1972, he invited Catholic Bishop Fulton Sheen. That man had some interesting things to say about end-time events. Wow, fascinating. And he said, we're right on the button. Just 2 sides are going to oppose each other. To his pulpit and joined with Catholic bishops at their Mass and the annual Mary Hour. So he's had that experience. Schuyler said it's time for Protestants to go to the shepherd, to the Pope, and say, what do we have to do to come home? When Schuyler was planning for the building of his Crystal Cathedral, he made a special trip to Rome to ask for the Pope's blessing. So if he gets his blessings there, why not his theology as well? He's got Vatican II theology, and who were the champions of Vatican II theology? The Jesuits. In 1985, the Paulist National Catholic Evangelization Association and Tyndale House Publishing jointly published What Christians Can Learn from One Another About Evangelizing Adults, which contained a chapter by Billy Graham and the book called For Greater Cooperation Between Protestants and Catholics and so-called evangelism. And there were articles by Cardinal Bernardin, Robert Schuyler, Bill Bright, Jack, all the others. This is how it works. And then he makes this mega statement. I like this statement. It's very interesting. I'm dreaming a bold, impossible dream that positive thinking believers in God will rise above the illusion that our sectarian religion have imposed on the world, and that leaders of the major faiths will rise above doctrinal idiosyncrasies, choosing not to focus on disagreements, but rather to transcend divisive dogmas, to work together to bring peace and prosperity and hope to the world. You take away doctrine, you're left with liturgy. No doctrine, liturgy. No doctrine, no methodology, no roadmap to Jesus. Replace it with a roadmap to self. That's the modern theology. All right, groundwork. Let's take it to the next level. Willow Creek, spawning the children. Both Bill Hybels and the Saddleback leaders all received their training from Schuyler. And where are we going with this spiritual exercise? These were the mega churches that started. We've moved beyond that. We're just going through a little bit of history. Let's have a look at their buzzwords. Understanding the new terminology. This is the visualization. This is the terminology from Willow Creek. Visualization, formation, mentoring, that's coaching, spiritual direction. We spoke about that the previous night. Consensus, ecumenism, seismic shifts, interspiritual community, changing face of worship, stemming the tide. When you hear these buzzwords, run! What do they teach at Willow Creek? Meditation promoter Kerry Wyatt Kent writes positively about monastic communities. Fascinating. What did Ignatius Loyola say in his spiritual exercises? Praise much monastic institutions. Here we're going back to monasticism. Martin Luther wrote that article that it is the worst evil that has ever been found on the planet. The worst evil. When King Henry VIII, who was not a good man himself, said, clean up this mess, what they found in the monastic system is not fit for description. Evil system. Well, let's continue. Fascinating. Monastic community, emergent church, rediscovering spiritual formation, all of these buzzwords. Kent identifies Scott McKnight as part of this mystical shift. McKnight acknowledges the Catholic connection to the contemplative practices. Kent also brings into our article priest, the Roman Catholic priest, Richard Rohr. We need to know what we're dealing with. Richard Rohr, who is in the same camp as someone like Matthew Fox, who speaks about the coming of the cosmic Christ. Who is in the same camp as Teilhard de Chardin, the Jesuit, all these people. And then she has no problem with the Jesuit priest, Paul Macatino, who says, how big is your God? This is Willow Creek. Well, let's have a look at these people. Who are you? Richard Rohr? Who are you? Well, this comes from the Roman Catholic webpage. He's, of course, a Roman Catholic priest. Bongos, dancers, Father, Mother, God, Richard Rohr Mass at the Los Angeles Religious Education Congress. Rohr changes some of the prayers of the liturgy of the Eucharist, opening the preface as he prayed, Father, Mother, God, before the consecration of the host, blah, 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 blah. Following the consecration, Rohr said, the Christ's blood will be poured out for you and for all, so you will know your sins are forgiven. In prayer for the departed, he referred to them as especially your own beloved who are already with the Lord. Here we have Roman Catholic doctrine, Roman Catholic Jesuit-trained individuals running the spiritual aspects of Willow Creek. And then there are institutions of repute who send thousands of people for education and training so that they can give spiritual direction within the church. And all over the world, these spiritual directors are popping up to train people in all the churches of the world as to how to obey your spiritual director, perinde cadaver, like a corpse. Rohr prefaced the Our Father by saying, and now knowing we are more than we are many, though we come from different places and races, we all share the same Father, Mother, God. Excuse me, I don't have a Father, Mother, God, so I don't know who you're sharing yours with, but definitely not with me. Here is their magazine, Willow Creek Magazine, 2007, Rediscovering Spiritual Formation. From monastic communities to the emergent church, spiritual formation continues to shift and change a whole new generation of Christians. So now suddenly we must all be changed. And we must experience this spiritual formation. 30 years ago, most evangelicals had never even heard the term spiritual formation. Today it is the subject of Christian conferences, retreats, even the emphasis in countless seminary programs. Scott McKnight, New Testament scholar, author, professor, religious studies in North Park University, says even the acceptance of the term spiritual formation represents a shift in thinking, especially amongst evangelicals. Richard Foster's 1978 bestseller, Celebration of Discipline. Who are these people? These people are people who believe in this cosmic Christ who will come, this New Age entity that will finally fuse everyone into one unrecognizable blob. And then he talks about how we do this. We reintroduce the evangelicals to classical spiritual disciplines. Please note the words, reintroduce to classical spiritual disciplines. And what are they? Solitude. Who spent their time in solitude? Monks. They went and sat in a cell, and there they had to perform their spiritual exercises. Silence, fasting, a more contemplative approach to scripture and prayer. So now I have to, contemplative approach is visualizing. Who practiced that, by the way, and who taught it? Ignatius Loyola. This is a Jesuit strategy to replace faith with this material. Such spiritual disciplines had been part of the Catholic tradition. This comes from whose webpage? Willow Creek. Such spiritual discipline has been part of the Catholic tradition for a long time, although they were often practiced primarily within the walls of monastic communities. Foster and Willett brought them to the evangelical community, although it took a while for mainline and evangelical churches to embrace them. Marvelous, we're back to what Martin Luther condemned as a horrendous travesty of justice. The monks all came out of the woodwork, married, and became normal. You need a wife to be normal, gentlemen. Excuse me, not these people, they're going back to monasticism. Eventually, these became accepted and even more institutionalized. Evangelicals began to think out loud about these things. Many of that has happened even in the last 5 years, says so-and-so, who formerly led the spiritual formation ministry in Willow Creek. So what is happening in these institutions is the spiritual exercises of Loyola being foisted upon a new generation of pastors and mentors and coaches and spiritual advisors. And then it is brought into the Christian church, and we've regressed back to Catholicism.